Welcome to the Great No DQ Debate.
Welcome everyone to the debate. Welcome everyone to the Great No DQ Debate. I'm Aaron Rift and I'm being joined by two very worthy contenders to debate the topics in the world of wrestling that you guys want to know about. Let me throw it over first to somebody who is making his No DQ video debut. He's been a longtime columnist, first for lordsofpain.net, and recently he broke on through to the other side here on NoDQ.com. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Tito. How's it going, Tito? How are you feeling tonight to be on NoDQ video?
I'm feeling great. Thank you very much for having me here. This has been a long time coming. Myself and Virtue have been talking about doing this for a while, so I'm very honored to be here. And thank you to everyone who's tuning in to see us live here at NoDQ's YouTube channel, and I hope you're entertained.
All right, and keep in mind, everybody, this is Tito's very first video he's ever done. So, Virtue, you got to go easy on the guy. You're a veteran of this format. How are you feeling about this contest tonight?
I always feel great. I always feel confident. Even though I was a little under the weather after stuff I ate tonight, it wasn't going to slow me down from being on here. I took some Tylenol. I took some Imodium. Tito is the veteran. He's been talking about wrestling since about 98, 99. Okay. But yes, maybe this format is to my strengths, but I think we're going to have a great time, and that's what it's all about. Win or lose, I'm going to do what I do. Troll slay. Let's go, Aaron.
Okay, so we have three topics. We're going to go one topic at a time. As you can see on the screen, we have a 2-minute timer. Each person will have 2 minutes to make their argument, and then after that, we'll maybe have a rebuttal segment, and maybe you guys can send in some questions you would like me to ask both of them. And at the end of the 2 minutes, if you're still talking, I'm going to play the very annoying air horn. So try to get your thoughts in within the 2-minute period. Now, let's go ahead and start off with our first topic, which will be regarding the Fiend, Bray Wyatt, a very unique character in WWE history. Is he as great as some people make him out to be? Virtue is going to be arguing in favor of the Fiend. So, Virtue, we are going to start with you on this. Your overall thoughts on the Fiend and your argument for why he should be the guy in WWE. 2 minutes, go.
Well, look, you say the guy. Bray Wyatt, in order to be the guy, he needs to be put in a position where he gets pushed and he wins. And let's go back. When the Wyatt family was hot, they were at their hottest with the Shield, right? Roman was coming up in 2014 as a singles competitor, which I'm sure we'll talk about. Bray had some big-time momentum. Got to face John Cena at WrestleMania 30. And what happens? They book John Cena over him. What happens then a year later? Bray gets to face The Undertaker on the big stage. Now, Undertaker lost the previous year to Brock Lesnar, so put him over, get him back over. Bray did the job again. Yes, he suffered some injuries. I'm pretty sure Tito's going to mention that. But, let's be honest, all wrestlers suffer injuries. John Cena has suffered injuries. The problem with Bray Wyatt is he might not be the best physically in shape, right? He's Husky Harris. That's why this gimmick works for him. It's creepy. It's weird. There was a time he had the whole crowd in the palm of his hands singing "The Whole World in My Hands" with the whole John Cena thing. But who wins that feud? John Cena did. Just like Rusev got buried by John Cena, WWE has a problem allowing new stars to shine. And in order to do that, you got to win big matches against big opponents. Bray Wyatt, what did he do? Was getting some nagging injuries, took a step back, created a character. Perhaps a little too demonic for some. And maybe it doesn't make sense with the supernatural, the no-selling, but let's be honest. Yes, The Undertaker is a legend, but he got away with it. Paul Bearer had light coming out of an urn. They did lightning. Kane had fire coming up out of the ropes. Now, I get it. Those are two all-time legends. Will Bray ever be even close to even a Kane? I don't know, but in order to make stars, it does take a lot on the participants, the performers, end to do it, but also booking has to get behind them, just like they did with Hogan, Warrior briefly, Cena, and all of them.
Your time is up, Virtue.
I can't believe I took that long. I thought it was going to be like 30 seconds.
Yeah, you went for quite a bit. Now, we do have a few super chats in here. TJS says, good evening, boys. This is going to be a squash. But who is squashing who is the question. And Psycho Jet Black sent in a $2 super chat, says, Tito is more over than Slapjack, T-Bar, not me, the other T-Bar, and Ricochet. All right, Tito, so you just heard Virtue's comments. I'm going to reset the timer. Tito, go ahead with your rebuttal.
So, correct me if I'm wrong. Did Bray Wyatt just move to Raw? And
Yes.
a year ago, where was he again? Oh, he was on Monday Night Raw. So he goes from Raw to SmackDown and back to Raw. A successful wrestler on the marquee show now for WWE, which is now SmackDown on Fox, was just moved back to Raw Purgatory. See, here's the issue with Bray Wyatt. It's not so much the injuries, and it's not so much the goofy gimmick, which I'll get to in a moment. The issue is the quality of the matches. You just mentioned the matches at WrestleMania against John Cena, Randy Orton. I believe he's with The Undertaker. Those are big-time opponents. When you're put in a spot against a big-time opponent, you have to bring your A game. The fact is, those 3 matches were terrible for him. They were low in quality. Everybody forgot about those matches after that WrestleMania happened. That's the issue, and that's what we'll talk about later on with Roman Reigns. When you're pushed into a big spot, you got to take advantage of that. If you're against a huge superstar, you got to bring your A game. You can't just lollygag around the ring and hope that the big-time superstar will put you on his back and carry you. That's the issue with Bray Wyatt, and that's why he's not over. Regardless of his goofy gimmicks, whether it's the Bray Wyatt stuff that's Deliverance or putting on the scary mask with the Fiend, the fact is his matches are not delivering, especially as the Fiend. His matches are god-awful. You remember that Seth Rollins match with All Red? You remember that? Just terrible. Remember those matches in 2017 when he was feuding with Randy Orton over the WWE title? Just god-awful. Now let's get back to the gimmick part here. You talked about, it's okay for the Undertaker. It's okay for the Fiend to do things. But when Undertaker was...
Let him finish this thought.
Make one point. When Undertaker was doing his goofiest stuff, Undertaker versus Undertaker, resurrecting, lightning shooting from the sky, those were the lowest rated periods of the WWE's history. That's a fact.
All right. Thank you very much for that, Tito. All right. So now we're going to go back to Virtue, and we have a question from the chat room. So
I have
Virtue,
a rebuttal for sure.
You can answer this. You have 2 minutes to answer this question, and you can also give a response to what Tito just said. So I'm going to reset the counter. 2 minutes. The question from Daniel to both of you. Virtue, you're going to start. What would you change about the Fiend Bray Wyatt? 2 minutes, go.
I like the whole Fiend thing, but the fact is I knew it wasn't going to get too far with Vince McMahon and the way they look at things because it was all Bray Wyatt coming up with that. It wasn't Vince McMahon. What I want to see is the character gimmick. I want to see Wyndham Rotunda. Like Mick Foley did the 3 Faces of Foley, and he was at the most over. He was at his most over when he was Mick Foley during the whole Rock angle, and people got behind Mrs. Foley's little boy. But let me go back to Bray, okay? He has had great matches. Daniel Bryan, he's had a great match with Daniel Bryan at a Royal Rumble. He had an awesome match against Roman Reigns in a Hell in a Cell, and the John Cena match was not the drizzling SHITS, okay? Yes, maybe the Undertaker match wasn't that great, but that started to become a problem with the Undertaker. Goldberg had a bad match. You're going to say later on that Roman had a bad match. Undertaker going in there, being dead weight, no pun intended. So Bray Wyatt is very capable of having very, very good matches. Problem is, a lot of times they have him go out there and they book a 10-minute match where he loses to Orton with images on the ring at a WrestleMania. That sucks for Bray. That really does. But, to be honest, the Fiend thing was cool. It is cool. I'm not necessarily saying that needs to be the front and center of the show. But Wyndham Rotunda taking the business seriously, coming off of all of his gimmicks, to me, number one guy in the company potential. And I will believe that because he's got talent and he can go in the ring as long as he stays healthy, which he seems to do lately. Maybe the Fiend gimmicks helped him out with that.
All right. Virtue, your last 20 seconds here. Do you think Alexa will help him, or does it help Alexa?
It's just to do something with Alexa, right? That's all. She's a tiny girl that got hurt in matches a little bit. And like Bray, he becomes the Fiend to maybe save injuries, nagging injuries. Well, now Alexa is doing this gimmick to maybe save her from concussions and getting hurt all the time. Maybe not working as much. So that's kind of cool that they do that.
All right.
I like them both, and I always will.
Okay, so Tito, Vin Barron's question was, do you think Alexa helps him, or does it help Alexa? And then you can give your final response here to Virtue. 2 minutes, go.
I don't care. Alexa's being wasted as a manager. She's a great wrestler. You need to figure out a better way to use her as a wrestler, and also figure out a better way for the women's division not to hurt each other. Do less high-risk spots. Take care of each other out there, ladies. Don't hurt each other. Keep her away from Nia Jax. Now, getting back to, what would you change with the Fiend? And I agree with Virtue, and I've been saying that for years. He is the son of Mike Rotunda. He's the nephew of Barry Windham. What's his name? William Rotunda. I mean, embrace that legacy. You could still call him Bray Wyatt, and you could still call his brother Bo Dallas, but embrace that legacy. You embrace it for many other wrestlers, right? You make sure that you mention that Roman Reigns is the cousin of The Rock. You say everything about other bloodlines except for Bray Wyatt. And he needs that right now because I think he's just going a little over the top with this gimmick. He's got some talent, but there's just some reason he just isn't rising for that big moment. That's what the reoccurring theme we'll talk about tonight with both Bray Wyatt and Roman Reigns. If you get in a big match with a big-time legendary opponent, you got to bring your A game. And you mentioned Daniel Bryan and his Hell in a Cell match with Roman Reigns. I agree. Hell in a Cell.
Daniel Bryan was at Rumble.
No interrupting.
No. Hold on here. I would say that the match with Roman is one of their best matches for both guys. But who doesn't have a great match with Daniel Bryan? Tell me who. Tell me a stinker in Daniel Bryan's career. Everybody has a great match with Daniel Bryan, and including recently versus The Fiend, and also, of course, that Royal Rumble match. Everybody has a great match with Daniel Bryan. But what about matches against John Cena? What about Randy Orton? What about you got to bring your A game when you're with a legend, and Bray Wyatt and Roman Reigns do not.
All right. Now we'll wrap this up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put 2 minutes on the timer here so you guys can go back and forth here for the last 2 minutes with any final arguments. If you guys want to talk over each other, we'll see how this goes. Virtue, go ahead and start us off. Anything you want to say to Tito?
John Cena has had plenty of stinkers, okay, first of all. And Daniel Bryan was maybe the best wrestler today, right? Ever since Chris Benoit, yes, I said his name, has passed, and Eddie Guerrero has passed. Daniel Bryan, so to say he has a great match with everybody, of course. So John Cena has had stinkers. That's all I'm saying. And a lot of people have had stinkers against The Undertaker, Goldberg, etc. So I'm not going to put the blame on a Bray Wyatt at all. And I'm not going to mention Roman right now because that's a whole other topic. Bray can go. Is he perfect? No. They all could do work. They all could use work and get better. But he has enough, I think, between those ropes where he can pull it off and be convincing. And I'm just saying, I haven't bought into Drew McIntyre, and I should, but I haven't. But I've bought into Bray Wyatt all this time, right? Maybe that's just a difference of opinion between you and me.
Yeah, but with John Cena, though, I there's 10, 20 matches that I remember of his. With Bray Wyatt, his stuff is instantly forgettable, except for the 3 matches that we just mentioned here, 2 with Daniel Bryan and 1 with Roman Reigns in the Hell in the Cell. Other than that, whoop-de-doo.
Forgettable in your opinion, but I think the WrestleMania match was it an all-time great? No, but was it very damn good? Yes, and I like the cage. I think they ended up doing a cage match. That whole trilogy of matches they did, they weren't stinkers. Now, has Bray had some stinkers? Yeah, like I said, a lot of wrestlers have, unless you're like a Daniel Bryan. That's just my point of view. That's my opinion.
I mean, I think that they need more work with him. He needs more work. He needs some more dedication in the in-ring as well as Roman, as we'll talk about later on. But when you keep pushing these guys to the top, there's consequences. If you look at Bray Wyatt in the mix during 2017, SmackDown's ratings went from upper twos to lower twos. And if you look at the recent SmackDown ratings, they started off about, 3.4 million. It came down just below 3 million. Then they've been inching their way down to 2 million with Bray Wyatt as a pushed featured wrestler. He's a world champion as well. I mean, it's just some people have it and some don't.
Well, right. I'm not going to talk about my ratings analysis until the Roman Reigns part of this. So I'm glad you brought that up because that's just a foreshadow for later, which I'm sure we'll definitely disagree on.
All right, we're going to wrap up this first round. Very intense, guys, and I'm sure it's only going to get crazier as the night rolls on. I asked the chat room. Keep it rolling. I asked the chat room who won round one. We'll see what the responses are, but we are going to move on to the next topic, which is who is the more creative genius? Who is the guy that has more intelligence when it comes to professional wrestling? Is it Vince Russo or is it Paul Heyman? Both have been considered great creative minds, and also both have gotten their fair share of criticism. Virtue, of course, is representing Vince Russo, and Tito is representing Paul Heyman. So, Virtue, since you went first last time, we're going to start with Tito on this one. Tito, why is Paul Heyman a greater creative mind than Vince Russo? You got 2 minutes, go.
Well, I think what it boils down to is that Paul Heyman can do more with less. Now, I personally like Vince Russo. I'm not like a big hater, and you could read my past columns there. You know, I give him a lot of credit for the Attitude Era. I think people disregard his contributions there. He changed the creative culture there in '96 and helped them, go on to greater pastures here through '99. The thing with Vince Russo is, he is a writer. He's a creative writer. That's his main role. Things have to be perfect in the environment around him for him to succeed. In WWE, he had the talent. He had Jim Ross supplying the talent. He had Pat Patterson helping organize matches, lots of great road agents, and, of course, the stability with Vince McMahon. Then he joins WCW, and it's total dysfunction. You have a weaker roster. You have overpaid older superstars. You have dysfunction with Time Warner becoming AOL Time Warner. And, of course, he had issues. I mean, it's obvious. Then he goes to TNA, and probably in the early to mid-2000s, TNA, that was probably his best years there. And they had a pretty solid product at the time. They drew about 1.5 million on Spike TV. We always praise AEW for getting 800,000 now, but they got 1.5 million. So Russo has some success when everything right is in place. And then, of course, in late 2000s, early 2010s, you get the whole Hogan, Bischoff crew coming in, things falling apart. Dixie Carter has her issues, and so he struggles. Paul Heyman, on the other hand, can do more with less. I'm convinced he can go to the local YMCA basketball court, recruit a bunch of guys, give them a bunch of gimmicks, and he could create a promotion just with that. That was essentially ECW. And if you look at what he did in ECW specifically, you can see exactly what his genius was. Where did the may I make some extra points? I have a little extra time if you don't.
I'm allowing him. I will allow it.
Virtue says okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I'll give him extra time as well.
Okay.
If you look at ECW, where did the Attitude Era come from? And we're quoting here where it came from. They pulled a little bit of those ideas from ECW. Then you look at the talent roster that ECW had. They endured talent raid after talent raid. They had Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, the Luchadors. They had Dean Malenko. And then in 97, they had Stevie Richards, Raven, and Perry Saturn ripped from them. Then 98, they had the Sandman taken from them. They got Al Snow from the WB. They made him into a superstar. Then WB takes him back. And of course, they took Terry Funk from there. In 99, they lose the Dudleys, Taz, and Shane Douglas. And of course, in 2000, they lose their world champion in Mike Awesome. He has all that talent raid, just ripping his talent out there, and yet he keeps reinventing himself. And yeah, ECW failed because Paul Heyman's not an accountant. That's why it failed. They were losing money. He's not good with money, but creatively, he made a lot of talents. Steve Austin and Mick Foley both had stops. in ECW before they went to WB. He fixed them. They went on to glorious years. I yield back to you.
All right, so Virtue, a lot of people in the chat thought you won the first round, but they're not so sure you can win this one. Vince Russo's pretty unpopular, so you got 2 minutes and maybe a little bit more to make up for the extra time that Tito got. So
Yep.
I've reset the time, Virtue. Go ahead.
Let me start with Paul Heyman, okay? Yeah, it was a perfect storm. The rise of the Eastern Championship Wrestling into Extreme Championship Wrestling, and he was getting guys like Pillman that were fired from WCW in Austin, and he just gave him a live mic. You know who else told Vince McMahon to give people microphone time? That was Vince Russo in WWE with Stone Cold Steve Austin at the announce desk while he was the ringmaster. So yes, Paul Heyman did in ECW keep that afloat for a long time, but you know what happened? If the talent kept leaving, if he could go to local Y and make this talent so great, eventually it fizzled out. Now, you can say it's because he's not an accountant and he owed people money. Well, once he got to the Just Incredibles, with all due respect to Polanco or whatever his name is, look, Paul Heyman, at some point you can't make chicken salad out of chicken, S-H-I-T. So to me, Paul Heyman, as great as ECW was, you can call it the preliminary Attitude Era. It ultimately failed and went out of business. Now, if he was a better businessman and promoter versus booker, which I'll say he's a great booker, Vince Russo's a great writer, then maybe. But the fact is, then he went to WWE, became, he did announcing there. I always thought Paul Heyman was a very good on-screen character as his manager role. He wrote some great SmackDown TV, but it didn't last. And is that a Vince McMahon thing, or did he just use up all his ideas and he couldn't stretch it out? And of course, the recent Raw didn't last very long. I mean, heck, I wish Bischoff was a topic. Maybe we could use him next time, but that would be interesting. But ultimately, to me, Paul Heyman has never kept a spot, never kept a promotion. He's best when he's being an advocate with Brock Lesnar, Roman Reigns, CM Punk. Is he creative? Is he a genius to points in wrestling? Yes. But Vince Russo has held the record ratings for writer, and they've never been able to sustain. Now, you can say it's because he had all the pieces. He was in the perfect storm with Rock and Austin in the Attitude Era. But WWE was never able to sustain those ratings when he left. TNA had its best ratings. He got them from a weekly pay-per-view promotion. His writing ultimately got them a TV contract. Look at what happened to TNA when the Hogan and Bischoff thing happened, and then Russo ended up leaving. Dixie tried to bring him in as a consultant. He ended up leaving when that whole SHIT storm got open and Mike Johnson reported that he's secretly working for Dixie. Once Russo had nothing to do with creative anymore, where is TNA now? His WCW tenure, they were bleeding. He comes in a sinking ship that was already set afloat and sinking in the middle of the ocean like the Titanic because of Eric Bischoff, maybe Kevin Sullivan and others. And he actually stopped the bleeding for 3 months, went home because of politics, came back in 2000 and threw everything against the wall. Writers will do that. And what happened? He maintained ratings, actually increased them a little bit. They were done. Before he even went there, they could never compete. Why could they not compete with WWE's Hot Attitude Era ratings? Because Russo set that up. Maybe Russo and McMahon are the perfect two combination, and it'll just never happen again because of egos. But I'm telling you, Heyman's good. Russo is slightly better. I'm not going to call either one of them great because they got faults, right? Very few people in the wrestling business are great. I would consider Vince McMahon great because he turned his dad's company into a billion-dollar corporation. But they're very good. At least Russo's very good. Heyman's just good, in my opinion.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it.
Did the buzzer go off?
I did not put the buzzer on because I was giving you time.
Okay, so I went over two? Because
you went way over two.
You can have more time.
All right, so we're going to go back to Tito. Tito, you're going to have 2 minutes. We're going to keep it to 2 minutes, so get your thoughts in. And we do have a couple questions here. James sent in a question, said, who would strive more in today's culture in an upstart promotion? So I'll have both of you answer that, and you can finish off your thoughts. Tito, respond to Virtue. You got 2 minutes. Go.
Sure. Here's the issue with Paul Heyman and Vince Russo here. Paul Heyman is more like he's got to be in control. He has to do his thing and be left alone. Whereas Vince Russo fits like a business climate or a corporate culture better. In my opinion, and maybe people might disagree, I think Virtue might agree with this. I think Vince Russo would actually fit in today's company, today's WB, because he understands Vince McMahon. Every person I've ever talked to that's been backstage with Russo has said he kind of has like a seductive way about him. He has a way that he can smooth things over with everybody. And he's very good at working Vince and convincing him to go a certain direction or to change things. He was one of the best that could convince Vince McMahon to do things or try things. And that's why he was very successful in that environment, working as his writing role. Whereas Paul Heyman is bullheaded. He won't change his mind. He refuses to, take any criticism from Vince McMahon. And that's why he was ultimately let go for Smackdown, for OVW, for, ECW, and of course the recent executive director thing. But the ridiculous release is because each time he was very successful in each of his roles. SmackDown had higher ratings in 2002 through 2004 with him in charge than Raw. Okay, ECW, it was on the Sci-Fi Network. It had some bad things dealt to it. Remember the zombie that Sci-Fi Network forced them to do. But you cannot deny how awesome those 2 one-night stand events were. Those were amazing. CM Punk was lounging and almost terminated in OVW until a man by the name of Paul Heyman came and salvaged him and showed him, started using him, started teaching him things, started pushing him. And, Heyman can do more with less. And he can push guys and give guys a gimmick like the Sandman or Tommy Dreamer, or can fix Scotty Levy to make him become Raven. He does these little tweaks, just like he's tweaking Roman Reigns right now, in order to make them more successful.
All right, your time is up, Tito. All right, Virtue, you got 2 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and reset the timer. And the chat room is feeling that Tito has this one. So whatever you got to say to convince them, you got 2 minutes
Well, that's
left.
because they're marks for Heyman, because this is my point right here. Paul Heyman caters to the diehard wrestling fans, the 1.5 million fans that watch Wednesday nights if you add the 2 shows up, right? And you do the math versus Raw and SmackDown's 2 million-ish, there's only 500,000 casuals left. Vince Russo writes for casual fans. Paul Heyman books for diehard wrestling fans, marks. And that's the big difference. Are they both creative? Sure. But the reason why Russo gets dismissed, and I'm going to lose this segment according to you, is because wrestling fans, most of them that watch today, that follow Aaron's channel, they like the wrestling. They like the guys that Heyman gets behind. They want the Paul Heyman guy shirt. They don't like a writer where people like Dave Meltzer and Brian Alvarez say is out of date and they had the worst stuff ever. Who made Booker T a world champion, right? That was Vince Russo, not Paul Heyman, right? And I feel if the whole Benoit and Eddie Guerrero stuff didn't happen and they jumped ship, they would have got good pushes. And WCW 2000 might not have sucked as bad because he had to throw so much stuff against the wall. Did it get a little over the top with the David Flair stuff and this and that? But hey, why not? Why not do everything you possibly can to try to get attention? I do feel bad for Russo booking. It was more of a political thing. He says other people said yes on it, putting the title on him, David Arquette. The David Arquette thing was a movie thing they wanted to get in USA Today, and they did. But, yeah, both guys did bad stuff. But for people to say that Heyman's clearly just better than Russo, they're different people. You got a booker and you got a writer. So if you like the Booker Heyman better, you can say Tito won this debate. That's fine. But Vince Russo made TNA something. He got them from weekly pay-per-views from a fairgrounds in Tennessee to television. To me, that's his best accomplishment. You can say he's smut and he does all this stuff, the sexual appeal. But look at what's that the girl group with Velvet Style? Knockouts were the most over in TNA. Thank you. Sex appeal sells when Russo knows it.
Okay, so we're going to have one final 2-minute segment here, and you guys can go back and forth here and throw each other your own questions or whatever arguments you want to make. Tito, go ahead and start us off. 2 minutes, go.
Like I said, and again, I've shown some praise towards Vince Russo. I'm not all 100% against him. His role is a writer, and when things are in place, when he has a good team around him, he thrives. Paul Heyman can do more than just write. He can develop talent. He can mold talent. He can create gimmicks for talent. He does much more on the talent side of things, and besides the storyline side of things. I mean, just look at these guys that he had, unique guys. he took a lot of wrestlers that nobody else wanted to use, and he made them into superstars. He took guys that probably don't look like your average wrestler, like the Sandman. I mean, Sandman looks like a regular dude, and he comes off with his Zubos pants and his T-shirts, and he says, walk down there with a cigarette in your mouth and drink a bunch of beers. Hey, was there any wrestlers in WB that was drinking beers? Can you guys tell me that one? I can't recall any stone cold wrestlers that used to do that. But
what kind of promo could he cut though?
He didn't have to cut a promo. He just bashed beers off his head and spit in the crowd. They like that stuff. Just saying.
Oh, is this the interrupt time, Aaron? I couldn't.
Yeah, go ahead. Say what
I don't want to.
Yeah, go ahead.
No,
yeah,
I'll go ahead. But I just wanted to make sure I wasn't stepping over.
I'll agree. He doesn't have a good promo, but that's the point. Heyman can mask a talent's weakness by giving him an outrageous gimmick and putting him out there. Don't speak, Sandman. Just bash a bunch of beer cans off your forehead. That works. You'll get over, and he did get over.
Virtue, anything?
Vince Russo. Like, who was Sean Morley before Val Venus during the Attitude Era? That was 100% Vince Russo. Go look it up. The three faces of Foley. Who worked closely with Mick during that? Vince Russo. It's all over these documentaries. And what happened with Foley? He had the best run of his career. Now, you could say the Hell in the Cell bump really set it off. Now, Vince Russo didn't go and tell him that. But in his own way, everything that you said Heyman can do, Russo is capable of. But you're right. He is better in a corporate environment. There's no way almost 60-year-old Vince Russo today will go back in that environment. If it was 35 to 40-year-old Russo back when he was in his prime, he would totally probably be there. He actually was going to go back and just before TNA.
2002.
And what happened, and this is his story, and I believe it, Vince wanted him back. Stephanie was condescending to him, and he said, forget this. And, of course, some reports say that he got fired by Stephanie. I really think Vince would have kept him there if he wanted to, but he was not going to work under Stephanie. I'm telling you, people, if you say Tito won, you like Heyman, that's great. But go back and fact check and research a little more on Russo other than that stigma of WCW 2000.
But we agree a lot on Russo, though. That's the point here. But if you talk about Mick Foley, again, where was Foley before he joined WWE? What promotion? What promotion?
Death matches in Japan. That's how he became.
He was cutting promos in Heyman's basement. That's where he was.
Right.
And let's talk about SmackDown 2002 2003. John Cena, Brock Lesnar, World's Greatest Tag Team, the Guerreros. Rey Mysterio comes back in a glaring fashion. Who was the creative guy behind all of that? Oh,
like Vince McMahon let everything happen with Russo. Vince McMahon let everything happen with Heyman in 2002, 2003. Same boat, same scenario. When you're in the right atmosphere and Vince allows somebody to work with him and he get great speed. So too bad we can't get a kumbaya out of all of them. I mean, I really wish Russo and Cornette could have worked out to get the two different philosophies.
All right.
I really do.
Or ever see Russo and Heyman together. That would be interesting.
Well, yeah. I lost this one, I'm sure, but I feel I did good for Russo.
But I'm with you on Russo, though. I'm not like 100% hater, and you could read in my past columns, and I know he doesn't like what I say about his WCW tenure and his late TNA tenure. He's told me that. But Russo should get credit, and I think WB should actually think about bringing him back. He'd work in this environment.
And for all those TNA fans that drink Shasta Cola, thank Vince Russo.
All right. On that note, we are done with that. I was giving you guys some extra time to let it go for how long it was going to go. But at some point, we got to move on here to the final topic, the main event topic. We're going to probably say it's one apiece. I think the chat room went with Virtue for topic 1. They went with Tito for topic 2. So now topic 3 is the big dog, Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns recently changed his character up. The question is Roman Reigns worthy of being the guy? Has he earned the spot? And should WWE push him at the level of John Cena, Steve Austin, The Rock, and so forth? So as far as who goes first on this, I'm not sure who to pick. I'm going to leave it up to the chat. Who should go first? I'm going to let the chat decide, see what the majority is. It might end up being 50-50, but we're going to let the chat decide who goes first. I'm going to quickly count up the choices here from the viewers in the chat room if they bothered to respond here. Nobody's responding yet. We got Virtue. Okay, Virtue, you're starting it. So you got 2 minutes. Why is Roman Reigns the man and worthy of being in that position? Go ahead, 2 minutes. You're on.
Because he looks the way he does. He was one of the best bumpers I've ever seen. But he has been the unfortunate victim of getting pushed in, Tito says, as early as 2014, and I give him to that point. But really, to me, traditionally, 2015 was his big initial singles push in terms of that next level main event because he got to face Brock. He's the victim of the John Cena effect, the WWE Network era effect. We are no longer going to get behind one guy that Cena got to ride. They got to ride Cena for 10 years, and Cena did a good job. He didn't hold up Rock and Austin numbers, of course, but he did a good job. But then PG era hit, right? Cena lost his edge. People wanted to see him heel. Never happened. The network era happened. Now all of a sudden you can stream your shows. YouTube clips happen more, and it sucks because it really hurts the TV ratings. And Tito's going to try to kill me on this one. Roman Reigns is the main guy headlined 4 WrestleManias in an era of declining ratings. But what I've noticed about Roman, even recently, even with Smackdown last night, only drawing just under 2 million, he still keeps them from bleeding and hemorrhaging. This is a pandemic, folks. You put John Cena today in this role, I bet you they don't draw much more. Now, the problem with Roman was Vince McMahon putting his hand up his butt and being the puppeteer, suffering succotash. Anytime Roman has had the handcuffs off, he has been awesome. Absolutely awesome. There were shades of it during the early Shield days when they were still kind of heel, turning babyface. He was cutting some promos. Maybe he was more comfortable with Ambrose and Rollins in the ring with him, but he was looking badass. And of course, Dusty is his influence with his character today. Heyman gives him earworms. No doubt about that. Heyman is the on-screen influence of Roman. But I'm telling you, Roman's family, being cousins to The Rock, look what happened with Rock. He didn't get over initially. Then they put him with the Nation, and he became one of the biggest stars ever. Is Roman going to reach that level? Perhaps not. But in the era of the WWE Network era, Roman is the guy that nobody else can do. Nobody else can be in that role. And it sucks that the numbers are down because it's a different era. And I hate saying that, but we'll see what the chat thinks.
All right, Tito, you got 2 minutes to respond to that. Go ahead, my friend.
Sure. Now, to answer your initial question, should he be the top guy today? And I say yes. But the issue here is the roster's been thinned out so much. They've lost talent. They've had people leaving that, who's left? Braun Strowman? No. Seth Rollins? No. We just talked about The Fiend earlier. No. Part-time Lesnar, when you want to bring him in, when do you not? Of course he's the top guy here. And now that he has Paul Heyman with him, helping him script his promos, helping him change his match layouts. You tell me with that Jey Uso match, with his career from November 2012 through March 2020, show me a match that looks exactly like that. It had psychology, had some personality to it, had some, real brutality. You didn't see that with any prior matches. Paul Heyman is helping him out. And what's wrong with getting help? What's wrong with it? Everybody learns from somebody. Everybody is taught by somebody. There's nothing wrong with accepting help. I'm glad he's accepting help because he needed it, because he didn't get it from November 2012 through March 2020. And let's talk about that time frame here. Roman signs with Developmental through 2010 with no prior wrestling experience. Okay, and just less than 2.5 years, he debuts with WWE as part of the Shield, and he wrestled mostly tag matches through mid 2014, when he gets the pin in both of those Evolution matches, and then he's immediately booked into 2 straight pay-per-view world title matches, and then they're pushing him, and then they have him beat Randy Orton, then they have him win the 2015 Royal Rumble, and they're pushing him and on their way. Since early 2015, here are the numbers. Raw had over 4 million viewers. By the time Roman Reigns left the WWE during the fall of 2018, they had 2.5 million viewers. They lost 1.5 million viewers under his tenure, under his strong pushes and thousands in lost attendance and lower merchandise, all on his watch as the strongest push superstar.
All right. So we have a question in the chat room from James. So Virtue, you can respond to Tito, and you can also answer this question if you would like. James says, how detrimental was the 2015 Royal Rumble to Roman Reigns' character? 2 minutes, go.
He should have won 2014, okay? He should have won 2014 and not Batista. Yes, that would have been really, really early, but I think it would have been better off for him. The fact that the whole Daniel Bryan thing happened, and then the next year they wanted it again, I'm sorry. In Philadelphia, of all, the ECW place, he was doomed. Who got Braun Strowman over? Braun Strowman has really been a joke. Now, that's because maybe they let him dress in elf costumes, play big violins, but Strowman was over for a summer. Thanks to Roman Reigns, those matches were awesome. But guess what? Strowman couldn't last against Brock Lesnar. Darn, and WWE lost faith in him. What else? Roman hasn't had, the reason why those ratings go down, he's had the weakest supporting cast as a top guy than anybody ever. You're going to say it was John Cena. No. Cena still had Punk. Cena still had Undertaker coming in. Cena. Who has Roman Reigns had? He's had part-time aging stars. That's all he's had. Don't even tell me Seth Rollins is a top star. And it sucks because it's affected the numbers. Those numbers have went down. But go look at if he sucks so bad, he wouldn't go viral on every one of his YouTube uploads. Now, I know that's not TV ratings, Tito. I get it. That's not demo ratings. But I don't see any other wrestlers hitting those quick million in the first 12 hours, but Roman does. It just sucks it can't translate to TV. And we're in a pandemic, so those numbers are even lower. I put John Cena in this role today, and I think the numbers would still go down. Just because it's John Cena, maybe they would be up a little bit, but nobody's saving this era. Even when they bring in Rock, besides the first episode of Smackdown or Austin, they barely get those number pops before they could bring them in, and it'd be a huge pop. So what's happening with wrestling fans? It ain't Roman Reigns. Roman is doing a hell of a job being the top guy in this era after the John Cena effect. People didn't like John Cena being the top guy force-fed. Roman got that handed off to him. No wonder it was tough for him. Did he drop The Undertaker at WrestleMania? Yes. But, I mean, look at the Goldberg match versus Undertaker. Undertaker was dead weight by that time. I'm sorry.
All right. So I used the triangle sound effect. Let me know, chat room, if that's any better.
That was 2 minutes. That seemed like 30 seconds.
All right.
My turn.
All right. So, Tito, it's your turn to respond to that. And you could also answer that question about... I already forgot what the question was. Well, then we won't have you answer that. So go ahead with your response. 2 minutes, go.
Well, let's not use Goldberg as an example. Who has he had a good match against? Come on, man. I mean, he's a 50-plus-year-old man. He wasn't that strong of a worker during his prime in WCW, so let's not use him as a sample here. But you say that Roman didn't have opponents. Really? So let's say he's beaten CM Punk. He has defeated
before
Randy.
He was the top guy. This isn't the interrupt section yet. Okay.
No.
Okay.
He's defeated CM Punk. He's defeated Randy Orton. You've been praising Randy Orton all year, so he certainly wasn't an aging star then. And of course, he's wrestled Brock Lesnar multiple times, and in each of those times, this match has just been, it's just been okay. Triple H, he's wrestled Triple H. He's fought The Undertaker, of course, and we all know what's going on with that match. He's had big opponent after big opponent. And this is what we talked about earlier with Bray Wyatt. When you get pushed to a big spot with a major superstar, you got to bring your A game. The best matches that Roman Reigns has been against Daniel Bryan, against AJ Styles. They have great matches against everybody. And then when the stars lined up perfectly one night in a Hell in a Cell, his match with Bray Wyatt, that was good in that Hell in a Cell match. I agree with you right there. But when you headline multiple consecutive WrestleManias in a row, you got to bring your A game. And he's also headlined multiple pay-per-views as well. Can you tell me one match that has been pushed as match of the year in any publications, online, anywhere on the planet? You can't, because the matches are either just okay or they have some issues with it. When you get pushed to the tippy top thing, you've got to bring your A game. John Cena brought his A game. I can name a ton of matches from him
out.
that are in match of the year contention, because John Cena brought quality matches when he was pushed as the top guy. Roman Reigns has not.
All right. We now move on to our 2-minute free-for-all. Virtue, you can start, and Tito, feel free to interrupt. Virtue, feel free to ask Tito a question. Last 2 minutes here for you guys to get in your final thoughts and trade your final blows. Go ahead, 2 minutes. Virtue.
Any John Cena match of the year candidates had a Shawn Michaels in there, okay? So let's talk about this. The best reaction I've heard in wrestling the past 5 years, 6 years, came after your so-called lackluster match against The Undertaker at whatever WrestleMania that was. And that was the next night on Raw. And all Roman Reigns had to do was show up and smile and smirk and not say anything for 5 minutes. And he had that crowd in the palm of his hand because he looks the way he looks. He's related to The Rock. I don't care if you call it nepotism. People knew at that point he was Vince McMahon's pushed guy. We knew he was going to only go out there and have matches with his 5 moves. Pat Patterson probably told him exactly what Vince McMahon wanted. So all those matches to you were going to come over lackluster. But the fact is, Roman Reigns was good enough to make people show him that attention. And I don't care if they booed him. And maybe that's all for the better now that he's healed. But like the thing is, you go back to John Cena, he worked as a top guy for 10 years. He got to face all of them. Like you said, he worked against Orton and all these people. But who was consistently there, like a Cena, like a Triple H? Those were all show up, have the match, leave, and Roman had to do television by himself and feuded with the new talent that can't draw, that helps him draw. That sucks. Go back and look at the Ultimate Warrior. His matches suck. But you know what? I bought into him as a kid. Maybe Roman's marketed to kids, and maybe kids just don't watch wrestling as much as they used to. But I'm telling you, Hogan didn't have the greatest matches. Sure, he had some good work in Japan, and he did that match against The Rock at WrestleMania. But traditionally, the top guy doesn't have to be the best worker. They don't all have to be Ric Flairs, okay? Roman Reigns takes awesome bumps. That's what I noticed. He sells. And, of course, maybe he had to because he got beat up most of his matches, and then he did the 5 moves at the end to go over. Well, that's not going to come across as match of the year candidate. That's a Vince McMahon the way he wanted to push him. And it just sucks that he's had the handcuffs on him for so long. I wish the ratings were 3 million plus, but he's in this stupid era.
All right, your time's up.
Truly know.
Two more minutes here for Tito, and then we're wrapping this up. Go ahead, Tito.
Did he have handcuffs on, or did he need assistance? You tell me, because it seemed like they were scripting all of his lines for a reason, and his matches just weren't popping. It's an issue here. The matches just aren't good. They aren't coming through. And, whether it's things like he just wasn't developed well, there aren't that many good road agents backstage. In my opinion, the WWE system has failed Roman Reigns. You talk about the roster today, maybe it's not as good as it used to be, but the entire system's broken. Okay, the developmental system, it just isn't there. But there's some wrestlers that have shine and come through. But in terms of being a draw, and you're talking about people booing him the night after WrestleMania, if you look at that crowd that was there, the crowds are shrinking. They're all shrinking. The viewership is shrinking across the board. There's fewer people watching them. You say that the crowds now are booing him. They're booing him because they don't think he's that good to be pushed at that top level. He's not
That's
a
a market statement.
Fans
Fans aren't supposed to think. That's in their
not
opinion,
John Cena.
Because he's not flipping and
The
flying
Rock.
around.
He's not Steve Austin.
He
never brought his
wrestler.
matches.
He's just average. That the great workers he worked with made him look good. Just like you can say, well, Daniel Bryan and Roman was good because Daniel Bryan was in the match.
Oh, really? So every match he's had against the great workers are all great. There's no clunkers there. Whereas Roman's fought many of those same opponents, and the matches haven't been as good.
Who?
But
Who? Name one.
Huh?
Name a match Roman had against the legend that Cena had a match against that sucked.
Let's see here.
And it's an opinion of fans.
Orton's won. Orton's been a couple of his Orton matches were struggles.
Some of Cena's Orton matches were clunky.
I've seen a few. They were pretty good.
Say on that one.
And Triple H, Cena and Triple H have been good several times at its run. But let me drop this huge colossal fact on here in terms of how much Roman Reigns is a draw here. Here it is.
Last thought.
Let's look at the WWE Network subscriptions. They hit a peak in June 2018 at 1.7 million. Now, tell me what happened in July 2018 through August 2018. What was going on at that time? If you remember, it was the hype leading up to Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam 2018. And if you remember, Roman Reigns was belittling him as being a part-time wrestler. He wasn't dedicated to WWE. And, of course, Roman Reigns went on to defeat him at that SummerSlam. The WWE Network subscriptions has been declining ever since. In the third quarter of 2018, he lost about 100,000. They lost an additional 100,000. That key statistic, which Lesnar used to carry, Roman Reigns has kind of brought Lesnar's drawing value down because of that feud. So, with Lesnar now devalued, Roman Reigns now in his place is clearly the top dog. It hasn't worked out, bro.
That's fudging the numbers. And let's
those
look
are
at this.
numbers in the financials. Those are actual.
All right, we're gonna need a
numbers in the
fact check here,
financials.
people.
You're just taking numbers and you're blaming it on Roman. You're not blaming it on creative or the whole fact that he doesn't have a great supporting cast of full-time main eventers like all of our past greats have. Here's the thing with Roman Reigns. Okay, this is the WWE Network era. You're saying subscriptions are going down. He's left twice, and both times he's left. Sure, it's not millions of fans, but the ratings on average for the shows he was on, and I clearly went and proved this, just like your numbers are facts, and I'll give you that. There's at least 250 to 300,000 people on average when he's gone. That's a small chunk, but I mean, fans today think that AEW 700,000-800,000 is great. So when Roman leaves, so do his fans, and when he comes back, they go back up a little bit. Now he's not getting those back to Cena level.
Not lately.
I've been at two. It's the pandemic. I want to see when fans are back in the arena and what Roman's doing back when we're normal. But I've been to 2 WrestleManias and he still had the longest line, even longer than the hottest Becky Lynch that year at Fan Access. And I asked people, they didn't just sell more tickets for Roman to make it look longer. They sell an equal amount because they want their money. If people were going to buy Becky's ticket line, and so he still has an appeal. The problem is, he doesn't appeal to diehard wrestling fans, which is about 1.5 million. Which
the matches aren't good.
The matches aren't good in your opinion, but Hulk Hogan didn't have
many other people's opinions.
Warrior didn't have
many people's opinions. Where's the match of the year candidates at?
Steve Austin outside of Bret Hart didn't have good matches, especially.
Are you kidding me?
Especially when he broke his neck, dude.
Kurt Angle, Chris Benoit, The Rock. His matches against The Rock, those weren't good after Bret Hart. Are you kidding me?
But you're saying Austin's work
match against Triple H?
It was clunky with he kicked and punched. That's all.
Oh, come on, man.
He was, and you just checkmated me. You gave me my checkmate to you because Austin's matches look so great to you because he worked with awesome people. Roman hasn't got to work with that high-level caliber of people.
You just said he wasn't good after Bret Hart. You're totally wrong, man.
Before Seth Rollins came in and cashed in, Roman was having maybe one of Brock Lesnar's best matches up to that point at WrestleMania 31. Aaron, you were there.
Okay. All right. On that note,
hey, what was the rating of the recent Smackdown with Braun Strowman versus Roman Reigns headlining and quit as a season premiere? Under 2 million. Ratings have fallen since that big SummerSlam 2020 return.
It away. Ignore the fact that since he's been back, they're still drawing more on average than before he was back during a pandemic, nonetheless.
What's happened in the past few weeks? We've been at or under 2 million viewers. The numbers have come back down.
It's 1.95. It's 2. It's 2.1.
Okay.
Smackdown was down at 1.7 and 1.8.
Hey, just like numbers since 2015, they're all down with
Raw's
him
down.
pushed as the top guy.
Smackdown. Roman's not on Raw.
All right, guys.
Just look at the numbers, folks. Numbers don't lie.
All right.
During the WWE Network era in a pandemic, that's what he's saying.
And WWE Network subscriptions have dropped since June 2018.
Back for 2 months. Why aren't those ratings still going down if they really hate so much? Oh, they actually went back up and stabilized a little bit. Oh, okay.
Now they're back down. Look what happened last night.
He saves the bleeding. It's still up.
It's still bleeding, man. He's getting a refreshed push as a heel, and they're still going down.
1.6. He's gotten both of those shows up, and he's not even on Raw. Raw did 1.86 this past week, the highest it's been in 2 months. He's not even on Raw, but the intrigue of Roman Reigns being present in WWE during a pandemic is at least is stopping the bleeding. And that's what I've always said about Roman. He stops the bleeding. He's just in an era where they don't allow him to make a difference like John Cena. No one star can be bigger than WWE, according to the WWE NXT Wrestling Factory.
He is the bleeding. 4 million viewers down to 2 million and lower.
All right.
That's bleeding. Losing half of your audience.
John Cena effect.
All right. We're wrapping this up, guys. That will do it for the great No DQ debate. Now I got to ask the chat who won the third and final round. And as we get the responses, Tito, thank you for being on tonight. And go ahead with your plugs. Anything you would like to promote, go ahead.
I like to promote this great wrestling website that I work for, NoDQ.com.
And you got a Twitter page?
And follow me at Tito Wrestling. There you go. But definitely bookmark NoDQ.com. It's a fine website. It's real nice.
And you got to do true polls too, Aaron. I mean, you can get the chat's opinion, but let's do some real polls with some real numbers. Like I said, I don't care. Whoever thinks whoever won, it's a matter of opinion. The fact is, we just launched the great No DQ debate with Virtue versus Mr. Tito, and it doesn't mean it has to end here. And that's to me what this was all about. And it happened. We had our bickering online, but it all led to this.
All right, Virtue, your plugs.
Twitter, at NoDQ_Virtue. Go there, you'll find wherever else I go. So just go there, Twitter.
All right. Let's see what the chat room said. A lot of
it doesn't matter. We had fun.
Tough because he's got those. I see his points, but it's so analytical with the model, the business model WWE uses since John Cena hasn't been there anymore. It's
All right, guys. We may have to come back and do a part 2. I may do a Twitter poll because we got to have a winner of this. I'm going to do a Twitter poll.
Oh.
Maybe tomorrow morning I'll give people some time to watch.
I don't care because I'm going to say I won either way if people say it lost.
You'll just call anybody who says you lost a mark, Virtue.
What happened?
Never mind. All right, guys. Stay tuned to NoDQ.com for the very latest. And I hope you enjoyed the great No DQ debate. Make sure you follow these guys. Follow both of them on Twitter. And let us know more topics if you would like the great No DQ debate to return. And other contenders, maybe Jeff Meacham can be on one of these. Give us your feedback, your thoughts. Take care, everybody. Be positive. Stay safe. And we will see you all next time.